Hello, everybody. Welcome. I first encountered Danny Nemu in a panel on the topic of the human hand, put together by the brilliant dream incubatrix, Sarah Janes. And when I remember, being deeply fascinated with the hand, human hand. I remember hearing Danny remarking on how the specific whorls and shaping of our fingerprints could be understood to elucidate situations in our embryogenesis in the womb. I had never heard anything even vaguely resembling that. And although I have not studied palmistry, that the human hand has been one of my core fascinations for decades. So I remember hearing Danny remark on some of his insights as a palmist and realizing like I need to have a conversation with him at some point. So today we had our first conversation with very little introduction. I think you will find it astonishing. Danny speaks the languages of intelligence in ways that are as rare as they are profound, medicinal, and sometimes astonishing, not to mention hilarious. He describes himself as a consciousness researcher, a historian of medicine, a hypnotist, and a heretic on his website. I hope you may enjoy today's conversation as much as I have. Strap in. We're going directly beyond where the humans usually play in language. Let's see. How am I doing? Well, usually my answer is weirdly.
It can't be weird if it's every day, surely.
We could have an argument about that.
I
I'm Italian.
might lose the argument.
Yeah, especially in 2026. Right. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I just spent all day filling in my I'm writing this piece, which started off as a inquiry into the first day of Genesis and has grown into this 30,000 word sprawling essay on the history of the universe.
How
Um,
unfamiliar. I've never tried that. I certainly haven't tried that 60 times.
did you finish it?
Hello. I'm right here now, still working on the problem. Yeah, the first day in Genesis. So actually, I sort of half lied. I tend to focus on one very specific thing, which since childhood has puzzled me madly, which is what the fuck happened at that tree?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's Genesis chapter 2. I haven't got there yet. I'm on Genesis chapter
Right.
3. I'll let you know.
Yeah, next life, two lives down the road, we might get there. Um, I'd love to hear anything you might like to share about the insights that have arisen in this process, and also particularly uh, what you are motivated and passionate about in Genesis 1. How did this get started for you? It's kind of what I'm asking.
I wrote this piece. I can't actually remember why I wrote it. I wrote it about 4 or 5 years ago. Um, and I think I was looking, it was about cosmological constants and the anthropic principle, particularly looking at things like why the force of gravity is so finely tuned as to make the universe expand or make things move apart from each other fast enough that it doesn't all clump back together into something tiny,
Hmm.
and not so fast that it doesn't just disappear into hydrogen and helium right in the first few seconds of creation, or even sooner. So the degree of fine tuning of all of those constants, whether it's like the strength of the weak force or the strong nuclear force, and all of those kind of things are ludicrously fine tuned in order to pop out people that can look at these constants and go, what the fuck's going on? Or look at a Genesis 3 and go, what's happening with that tree? And so that's a problem in physics or cosmology.
Hmm.
Uh, so I wrote an article about it, looking at Genesis. So in the days of Genesis, you have day one, and then you have the second day, and then you have the third day, and then you have the fourth day, and the fifth day, and the sixth day. And all of them, except for the second day, end with, and it was evening and it was morning, day one, or the second day or the third day. And God saw that it was good, except for the second day, which isn't described as good, and the seventh day, which isn't finished yet. So we're still stuck in the seventh day, I think. But the
Hmm.
first day isn't the first day, it's day one. And the rabbis of Genesis Rabbah argue about why it's day one and not the first day. And they come to the conclusion that, or Rabbi Abahu says that it was created and destroyed over and over again until the Holy One, blessed be He, decided He liked this one. This one pleased me, those other ones didn't please me. And I like the idea of a God who doesn't really know what he's doing until he fucks around and finds out, and he makes a universe which kind of like making a cake or making pancakes. And I think I put too many eggs in this one. Okay, one less egg. And then you kind of get your fine tuning down until you make a really good pancake. And it was evening, it was morning, day one. And then on the second day, you have to work out what you're going to put on it, you know. Um, so you have these kind of cycles of you have these cycles of processes that end up not good, and then he kind of chucks it all away. I quite like that because you've got a couple of different answers to the anthropic principle, and one of them is the multiverse. There are infinite numbers of universes, and you know in one of them, my left and right thumbs are swapped around. Another one, I'm speaking backwards. Another one, I'm speaking to you in this language, but actually it's a different language and it means something completely different, even though it's using the same words. And it's a stupid idea. I don't like it. And even the guy who kind of proposes it as a solution to the anthropic principle says this is quite an unsatisfactory thing. It would be much better if we could derive physics from first principles. Um, so there's this kind of Christian and Muslim and yeah idea that God is omniscient and omnipotent, but I don't think he is. I think he's
Wow.
just kind of stumbling through trying to make it work, like the rest of us. But then what happened with the essay was like I sent it to Anthony Peake and he really liked it and he told me to he said he wanted to get he said we should get it published somewhere and I went well let me just kind of tweak it and it's just expanded into I think the second half of my third book.
How ironic, because apparently you're doing something very similar to what you are describing.
Go on.
Um, Attempts, failures, adjustments, reconception, re-envisioning, re-speaking, tightly refining, fine-tuning, all these things. In fact, what if it's impossible that there's any other way to do things? Right? What if in a universe composed this way, all processes must inherit this kind of approach?
I think that's the Gnostic hell of it. I think that um, I think that the production of information in formation, basically putting code into formation, is what this universe is about. Whether that's so part of like day four, day five, and day six, you get the loop, you get like the planets, and then you get the animals start getting created around day five. And in our fossil history, we have these moments of rapid explosion, like the Cambrian explosion,
Cambrian.
for
Mhm.
example. And it's super weird. You suddenly get in time periods which might be as short as 2 million years, and kind of the outer stretch is 10 million years, but most people don't think it's that long. You get all of the phyla suddenly, like fully formed mollusks, fully formed vertebrates, fully formed everything. And the genetics doesn't really add up because you haven't got time to go through all of those things. And if you trace the kind of molecular clocks, the genetic molecular clocks, you find that the same genetic master keys that code for wings in bats, in pterodactyls, in birds, and in insects all separate before anyone was anywhere near the air, and they code for wings in each of those different species, and they all grow in different places. Like they might grow off a middle finger, or which is in birds it's a whole part of the arm, and in insects it's like a bit of the leg, which a kind of gill thing on a leg which extends. But all of these species use the same code, use the same master codes to create these wings in complete, that are created in completely different places, different contexts. And it looks like the code was already there when those guys were wiggling around on the floor of the ocean. And if they were, why? And I think the reason is because they were created in previous incarnations of the universe. And
Oh, I
the
see.
same with like, when Tesla has a vision of the AC motor, or when Nietzsche downloads his work in a fever fit of 12 days, I think those things are already created. I think they're already in what the Gnostics call the pleroma,
Hmm.
in a space outside of space or beyond the
Hmm.
stars. The Gnostics talk about the place beyond the stars. And I think that's what happens in day two, because you have the waters below the firmament and they separate from the waters above the firmament. And it's not even a firmament, and it's an expanse. That's another kind of Aristotelian error, I think. Um, but those waters above the firmament, I think, without getting too kind of, angelly Pleiadian about it, is that they're quantum fluctuations in in the fields, which then condense into matter. But they stick around after this universe goes through its whole cycle of expansion and then heat death, trillions of years into the future. And
According
what
to,
is,
yes, I mean, that's a conjecture. To be kind.
yeah, um,
To be
yeah,
kind.
well, indeed, but so is that's a testable conjecture, in a way that, for example, the multiverse isn't. So Roger Penrose comes with this idea called, what does he call it? Conformal cyclical.
Right.
I forgot what the third C is, but it's got alliteration, so I like it.
Hmm.
And he says that at the end of the universe, it kind of like it gets so big and so long that, viewed from a kind of conformal space where there's no time and there's no measurement, because there's nothing vibrating anymore at that point, so you've nothing to measure time against. So
Hmm.
it's conformally similar to an infinitely tiny little speck of nothing or of something, which then expands in another big bang. So that's his theory. And he says that you can measure the,
Conformal cyclic cosmology.
yeah, that's it. So you can measure in the background radiation the ghosts of previous
Massive black
universes.
holes.
Yeah,
Massive
yeah,
gravity
exactly.
wells. Yeah, they send signals that cross the universe ending slash beginning barrier and should be readable here. And there's some evidence that they are.
Yeah, which is more than you can say for the multiverse. Like, and
No,
and also
that's a
this like,
completely that's a so that thing is a what I would call a toy. It doesn't qualify as a theory. It's neither verifiable nor falsifiable. It's an interesting toy. I think toys like that can be provocative, not necessarily because they give us a framework with which to understand or explore what's going on here now, but rather because they introduce a new perspectival lens that we are unlikely to concern ourselves with without it somehow being introduced. Right?
I think it's more sinister than that, man.
I agree. Oh no, no, we could go down that path. The anthropic principle, though, to return to that, seems to me a bit absurd. Um, in that the idea that things are quote finely tuned
Yeah.
implies that a they might be otherwise. No evidence of that whatsoever. That's a pure conjecture, right? All the situations as they are now is, as far as we can tell, actually what's going on. To suppose that they might be otherwise, so that this turns into an enormous miracle and an unsolvable or half unsolvable question, is a conjecture where the sort of you turn your mind into a gun and then you just flip the gun around and point it at your face ideologically, right? Which, by the way, for humans, this is one of their favorite games. They've been playing this game every time they can. They love this game generally. So I think we could invert the anthropic principle very in a number of dramatic ways that would definitely be productive of insight. The humans have tons of theories like this that don't make any sense. The Fermi paradox, absolutely nonsensical. The universe is swarming with life from space. They're like, but we can't find any. Like, really? What are you? Like, what is an octopus? Right? What are praying mantises? You don't see any? There's none around? Really? The thing you're thinking with is made of the answer to the question you posed by abstracting yourself from presence and intelligence and sensing here now. Right? So then it turns into the Fermi paradox. Not to mention the fact, of course, that like thousands of years, bizarre things in the sky, people meeting people or something from other universes. No, we're just going to throw all that away and say, no, there's no evidence for any of that. Right? That's a pretty bizarre first move. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah,
There's a
what I think.
bizarre problem with the objective perspective. The first part of that problem is that there are precisely zero objective observers. None. There is no such thing as an objective participant or observer. And the second problem, which is even weirder, is there are no things, right? There are no. The idea of a thing presupposes a bunch of stuff that's impossible. And it seems to me, I'll stop lathering in a moment, I promise. It seems to me to come from a catastrophic displacement of the expectation set that arises during the production and reproduction of artificial objects, knives, forks, etc. And then what happens is we just flip the universe over so that things, those artificial dead inside objects, which for most of human history were not dead inside, they were experienced as beings and gifts from gods and things like this. No dead inside things.
Mm.
Suddenly now everything is dead inside. The left hemisphere, quote unquote, the languaging aspect is having a heyday. It's like, these are just all dead objects, man. And let me tell you what their mathematical shape is, you know? That's what's going on. So a lot of these ideas come from a position where humanity, insight, dreaming, intelligence have been essentially pushed as far to the side as you can possibly go. And then you end up with these bizarre questions like, why is the universe so finely tuned? Or, I'm not claiming we should not entertain that question, but rather there's an understructure there that would be useful to shine some light into, I think.
And then there's a metaphysics of what you do with those questions. Because if we're talking about things like being objective, or even the idea of something being falsifiable,
Mm-hmm.
or or the other kind of the other like scientific metaphysics or scientistic metaphysics, which they use to explain things in the most simple way possible, which is Occam's razor. Like I find it kind of mind-blowing that people who are scientifically minded will kind of lean on those things as if it kind of means something.
Not
Like,
just means something, it tells us what we can and cannot do. That's different from meaning something.
yeah, yeah, indeed. And particularly the one about Occam's razor, I think is kind of fascinating in that, like, it's that thing about no things. Like,
Right.
the idea that something is better if or more admissible if it's less complex. It's like, have you looked out the window? Like,
Yeah, right.
it's
Did you,
really complex.
well, see, no, here's the this exact, you've hit on exactly what I'm trying to point at with the displacement. If the object of our concern is something simple enough and continuous enough in time, identity, and particularly in linguistic space, this is a crucial highlight and put an asterisk there. But if the thing under consideration is a piece of silverware, a fork, right? Then, and only then, does that kind of thinking have strong purchase, right? If it never changes, and the only thing that does that is something like a fork, right? And even that thing is changing in a billion ways per second, right? But looks stable, stays the same over time, clearly not looking to me like a being or an organism, right? So if the you see, this is the problem with huge aspects of language and thought. If the scope is simple enough, right? Did I lock the front door? Then that kind of thinking works. But just one hair beyond that, that kind of thinking is garbage, and you should run away from it in most cases. So we displaced the expectation of simple identity, continuity of identity over time. The fork will never be found to have moved itself, even once, right? So now parsimony. Now parsimony is really powerful. Occam's razor is kind of a special case of the goal of parsimony, I think. Um, but yeah, this displacement is probably one of the most devastating and lethal, actively lethal, a billion times per second moves that ever happened to human cognition. Absolutely fucking lethal, right? There are things. Now, of course, there are things because, we made this and it's continuous in identity, shape, and form over time. And I can't imagine it being a spiritual thing. Of course, I could show you 9 ways this is a spiritual thing very
Yeah, it's the
easily.
Ace of Cups.
Yeah. Right, right, right. Well, that's a little more of a metanoic perspective.
I mean, the question is, but did you lock the door?
Right. Yeah. How many of this object will be required for me to continue to be housed next month?
Yeah, that's a
Right.
question.
Yeah.
Question on my mind, anyway.
Mine too. Yeah. And more, as this ridiculous nightmare of modernity fucks itself endlessly into new conundra.
I just got myself a new, I just got myself a new credit card, and I'm not sure if I believe in it.
Well, see, this is also there's a weirder problem, which is as somebody who's very deeply fascinated by language, uh, and I know this is a bit of a cheat where I'm going to go next, but for about a year, I had some kind of non-human intelligence teaching me, and it ripped me a new mind every time it moved. And one of its primary concerns was the human relationship with language. So I think, from one perspective, it's exceptionally difficult to not lie in words. Really fucking hard. They're so compelling. They shape the consciousness with which we evaluate their productions. So they shape mind space, right?
Mm.
Um, so if I reconstruct mind space so that words make sense and are true or not, I'm working with about 1/50th of my intelligence potentials, and I think I'm playing a game that works.
Well, there's kind of, let's say there's hygiene you can do there.
Yes.
I think the one of Gandhi's ideas, and I don't know if I'm gonna paraphrase it. Oh, you've just disappeared. Maybe I'll just wait here. Are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you just disappeared though.
How fascinating.
You just became a disembodied voice. I'm assuming that I'm not
No, no, I don't think you
you-
were. There's
you're not God or something.
no, not yet. Although we were talking about some fairly primordial stuff briefly there. Not that we ever weren't. Is it good now? I think it was just signal breakup.
Yeah, you just vanished for a moment. That was the end of that continuity of of
You
the
were talking
thing
about,
there
yeah,
for a
but
second.
you were talking about Gandhi.
Yeah, so he says something along the lines of like being consistent is a curse. You know,
Yeah.
the idea that once if you said one thing and then you contradict it, you're somehow doing something off. And that kind of goes, I guess that goes all the way back to Aristotle and that it might even go all the way back to Greek or Indo-European linguistics, where something either is this or that, you know. But I think that thing about like the Hebraic, the Hebrew conception is almost the opposite of the kind of Zen thing that you're reaching towards, or at least some of what you're saying is reaching towards, which is that the code, like the light, the divine light filters through the words of the Torah
Hmm.
and is then kind of crystallized into form by that. And there's a really cool example of how that works, which I really like, which is there's a story of this, right? It's a true story. It's a story of a guy who asks his rabbi, and this is in Israel. He asks his rabbi if he should, he's got a lung complaint, right? And he asks if he should go to Switzerland to a fancy doctor to have his operation, or if he should stay there in the Middle East to have his operation. The rabbi says, no, no, stay here. And he has his operation. Apparently, he's fine.
Mm.
And the reasoning is this, right? That you've got the Torah and you've got the Talmud, which is, and you've got the conversation around the Torah.
Hmm.
And one of the laws in there is about whether an animal is kosher or not. And if an animal is blemished or diseased, then it's not kosher. So then this question arises: what if its lung is diseased? So you can't see it before you've killed it. And mostly the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi communities, they agree on um they agree on what they on their rulings, yeah. But in this case, they disagree. So the rabbi says, if you go over there to Switzerland, which is under the domain of the Ashkenazis, then your lung is not going to be kosher anymore. So, but if you stay here, your lung's going to be kosher. So it's like the word and the ruling and the decision creates the reality that we're in a generative sense. And I really like that idea.
Mm. I have, like, as usual, 17 thoughts competing for access to my face noise maker. Um, hmm, yeah. Okay, so the first thing that came to mind was when speech or writing is frozen like an intaglio, like a emblem, and then adjudicated post speak. Right? You said you were going to be here at 6 p.m. Right? This kind of thing. Something dies. Something is dying there because if we presume that speech acts are finished and complete, and that we should be held responsible for the form of speech, the word sequence we admitted in the future, then we have forgotten that every attempt at speaking to differing degrees under differing circumstances is an essay. It's an attempt. And often when I ask someone an important question, I will I will let them know before I ask for their answer that you're not bound to your first move. Go ahead and answer, and they'll put something together and answer. And now try it again, right? And they will never say the same thing twice unless the question is of a very specific kind. And then I'll say, okay, give it 3 minutes and try again. Like, wait, let's just keep going, and then we'll come back and say again what you think or feel about the question that I asked you or you asked me, right? We can turn that game around. And invariably, unless it's something pretty simple or primordial, like, I don't know, is murder good? Right? Once again, if the scope is compressed enough, you'll get a very similar answer every time. But if it's a question that has richness, you're going to get a different answer from the person every time. So when we freeze this and then enter the courtroom of adjudication, right, that seems not like something we should never do, but something we should be very careful about, and especially careful about forming societies around that kind of game.
Yeah. I mean, it's there in the word, isn't it? Like a definition is day fin, it's the end. You're finding the end
No,
of
but
something.
there's something weirder about that. It's the de-infinitization, right? It's
Yeah.
throwing away the swarming infinities
Yeah.
around the concern or perspective or goal or motivation.
Mm. Yeah. Which is kind of a death, or at least it's a
Yeah,
solidification.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that makes me think of three different things. One of them is that in Japanese, you've got a word which is shimata or shimaimashita, and you stick it on the end of other sentences. Like, so if you drop something, if you drop your plate, you would say osara means plate, otosu means to drop. Osara otoshite shimaimashita, which means I've dropped the plate and it's finished, because that's what shimao means. It means to close or to finish. Or you might say, like just when a bad thing happens, instead of saying shit, you might say shimatta, it's closed. And then
Hmm.
the most common word you ever hear in Japan is sumimasen, and it means hello, goodbye, sorry, various levels of sorry, excuse me. You shout it at a waitress when you want, and it means sumu means to end, and sumimasen means it doesn't end. So if you want to, like when you're saying goodbye, you say this doesn't end, right? And if
Hmm.
you're saying sorry, and you're saying sorry all the time in Japanese, you're saying sumimasen. There's still something ongoing here. But when something's gone wrong, it's like shimatta, it's finished. The end of that thing.
Huh. In Blackfoot, they don't have a concept for sorry. There's no such idea. And part of it is because, fairly obviously, right, to emit some face noise uh, does not accomplish the apology. Right? If I say I'm sorry, nothing is really accomplished. What happens there? I pretend that backwards in time I had a different intention or hope. The fuck is that? Right? Like, where did you even get that idea? It's fascinating to look into languages that have no placeholder at all. Let me give you another example. There are 0 words in Blackfoot that equate to war. No such concept at all, right? The closest thing they have is a word that means to wander curiously and adventuring in a living place half familiar to you. No word for war. Can you imagine? No, like that whole idea just being missing from the lexicon?
But did they war?
No, they didn't. Did they fight? Yeah, but think about what a war is, because in order to have a war, which is basically an extended violent engagement with another people, you have to be able to cache things like weapons. You have to store them up, right? You have to become committed to making weapons, and you have to store the weapons for extended engagements. You have to deploy the assets in a living place and the holy places of your people to kill other people. So you have to repurpose nature and your relationships. Did they fight? Yes. Were there battles? Yes. Were there ongoing disagreements that became violent? Yes. But there was nothing that I can understand so far as I have yet seen, right? Caveat, that looks like war. And I remember when I asked my friend, who's Blackfoot Beaver Man, about this, the way this arose was excuse me. I was talking about hummingbirds with a neuroscientist friend, and he said, "Those things are fuckers. They're just vicious." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, they kill each other at the feeding thing." And I'm like, "Well, let me understand something here. Are you guys putting big bottles of nectar colored red in jars on the porch? Because for a hummingbird, there's no chance of coming across a cache like that in nature. There are 0 caches like that in nature. For a hummingbird to get nectar, you're talking about visiting, I don't know, hundreds of flowers over an hour, right? Or whatever. So it occurred to me that the hummingbirds weren't necessarily bad things. but that what the humans were subjecting them to was driving them to extreme behavior. And what were they subjecting them to? Vast caches of difficult to obtain resources. This is a primary motivation for war. Capture the caches of the enemy. So I thought to myself, because Blackfoot people don't cache things, they'd probably have a difficult time in a war. So I called my friend, said, "Hey, do you guys have a word for war?" And he was like, "Nope. Here's this word we have." And by the way, there's ways to win a conflict in Blackfoot that would seem extremely strange to most of us. So, for example, if one of your sort of warriors can sneak into the enemy camp unseen, and particularly if they can touch the weapon of one of the good warriors in that camp, the whole conflict ends right there. You win. It's over. And it's much worse if you can touch the enemy combatant with their own weapon. Now it's really over. Like it just stops there. There's no more. Like it has been decided.
Yeah, I looked. I'm actually halfway through a two-part essay, and I finished the first one, and it's about Indigenous warfare. In fact, it's
Mm,
about warfare across history. The whole thing's about warfare and psychedelics. But I didn't look at Blackfoot. I looked at Oglala warfare,
hmm
um, Comanche, and a few other kind of North American Plains tribes, and
By the way,
then
there
looked at,
might be words for war in some of those people's lexicons, but apparently not in Blackfoot. Please continue.
yeah, no, I don't know about the linguistics of it, but the certainly the yeah, the caching of stuff, the getting hold of stuff is not what it was about. Generally, it was about well, in what's the guy's name? Crazy Horse, his biography.
Hmm
He's kind of really desperate to get a scalp. That's a pretty cool way of conducting your warfare. If you go to war and you come back with three scalps and you've won, or at least you've settled the grudge, and you've got some really cool trinket for your medicine pouch, like it's kind of cooler than, besieging your enemy's village. They didn't do that ever. They didn't have an idea of it, and they stopped their wars or stopped their battles for fast days. So one thing I found really interesting is that the ritual of the peace pipe, or the ritual of the war pipe and the ritual of the peace pipe are really similar, and even the pharmacology is similar. It's tobacco, which is oxytocin and vasopressin um, booster, and it's dancing together, which is a way of getting increasing your oxytocin, among other things. Um, but with the peace pipe, you invite your former enemies into it as well. So you're kind of shifting the edge of where your in group is. I think that's one of the reasons why those bastards uh, who are driving the psychedelic renaissance at the moment are so interested in MDMA in military contexts, is because if you can get a whole bunch of young men enlisting and taking MDMA all together, well, there's nothing they wouldn't do for each other on the battlefield, especially if they come from completely different places.
Right,
Um, yeah, I find that kind of thing really fascinating. In England, when we used to have lots of football violence here, what soccer you'd call it.
right.
But when ecstasy hit the football stands, it just evaporated, really quickly. So you'd have like firms that have been at each other for decades with Stanley knives and boots,
Right.
um, you know, and I guess the reason I'm saying it is that you actually have to try really hard to make MDMA anything other than um, promoting of friendship or promoting of in bonding. But like vasopressin in particular, oxytocin as well. It's really interesting stuff. The Some of the research into nasal sprays and how they make people behave. There's two really interesting ones. One was the trolley experiment. You know, the experiment you have like a train track and a train going down the train track. It's going to run over six guys unless you pull a lever. If you pull a lever, it's going to run over one guy. It's a thought experiment.
Can you put, yeah, okay, great. Because this
You
is
know
an
what I'm talking about?
experiment that has never been run,
No, no,
right?
no.
And
It's a
never
thought
will be
experiment.
run. Yeah, yeah. Please continue.
But there are situations where you have to decide whether you're gonna, murder someone to save some other people. That's like a situation. But anyway, the thought experiment runs like this: that if the guy on the track, this is running with Dutch people, if the guy is called Piotr or Martin or a Dutch name,
Mm.
you get different results to if the guy on the track is called Mohammed or Yusuf, or even
Mm-hmm.
like Stefan or a German name, right? And if you give
Mm-hmm.
someone oxytocin, they're more likely to kill Mohammed or Stefan rather than Martin. Um, because oxytocin is good for kind of in-group bonding, and that necessitates out-group like differentiation. And
Mm-hmm.
the other experiment with oxytocin was it's a game of it's a game of counters that you have to play in teams. And if you give people oxytocin, they are better at tracking their opponent's moves and better at attacking with their counters at the most strategic time.
Mm.
So yeah, that's pretty scary stuff as well. But yeah, like indigenous warfare, like fascinating. The Ogoni tribes are, I think, the most interesting. Like these guys would rock up. Well, before they went to war, they would like a few days beforehand. They would take the seers would take African dream route, and they would dream omens that would then be satisfied on the battlefield. And they took all kinds of things. They took canna. They took various types of snuffs, ergot, beer, and stuff like that. And then they rocked up at the frontiers of their territories in full regalia, dancing and singing and flinging spears at their enemies who were just kind of out of reach. And then you would display your manliness by throwing a spear and your nimbleness and bravery by dodging and parrying spears. And this went on until you ran out of spears or until someone got hurt. And then it stopped. And then you'd have a story. It'd be like, that guy was being really silly. He was wearing his big hat and he got too stupid and he got stabbed through the leg. And then you have a story to take home. You'd probably be telling that story for generations around the fire. Comparing that to like
Yeah,
how.
because the encompassing set of intelligences and concerns does not in any way resemble Western thinking at all, right? There's like 15 bubbles of meaning and potential and intelligence that are completely fucking missing if my goal is to kill the enemy, right? Like I have a single valued goal, or there's this manifold of shocking goals that are changing each other. It's much more like a dream,
Mm,
right? Whereas what we do is much more like stabbing ourselves in the face with a knife. I mean, it just doesn't resemble a dream really at all. It's, yeah, it's some kind of a nightmare collapse of 15 manifolds that you never want to be without. One of the most beautiful stories I ever heard in Blackfoot, which I'll resist telling in detail, involves something kind of similar. These two peoples, they've got a beef with each other, and unbeknownst to either of them, one male in each tribe um, has a dream of how to win the conflict, so to speak, how to advance the conflict into beauty. And both of the peoples laugh at the one guy that had the dream. So, in both, unbeknownst to anyone, right? They're just laughing at this guy who's had a vision. So, from each people, the guy leaves the camp and goes to kill, to get some scalps, right? To show that their dream was true. And on a very dark night in an incredible storm, one of the men takes shelter in a cave that is pitch black. There's no way to see anything in there. And in the cave, he encounters another man, and neither of them can see. And so they use the old touch language, right? And so one of them says, oh, I am the I am the I can't remember the two peoples. One of them is the snake people. I used to know their names. Anyway, one of them is, the first one takes a chance. He says, I am from this tribe, this camp. And the other one realizes, oh, that's the enemy camp. Right? So he could just kill him. Right now, he knows that man in front of me doesn't know I'm his enemy. I know he's mine. I could just kill him. But instead, he does the same thing. He says, we are the snake people. So they both then realize. They are the enemy people. And they form a plot. They decide to hatch a plan. So they each give each other a chunk of their hair. And they say, you know, we'll take this back to our people until I killed them. I killed one. Come with me. I'll show you where I killed them. I'll show you where they are, the body. They each do this. And the people kind of don't believe it. They're like, that's not a scalp. That's just a chunk of hair. There's no flesh on it. And he's like, yeah, just come. So the people send parties and they come together. And when they come together, the two men stand there and they exchange families. One says to the other, I give you my family. They're now your family. And the other one does the same thing. I give you my family. They're now your family. And these people who've had a beef for a long time, they come together in this place in the summer, in the spring and the summer. And the children and the elders are ecstatically joyful. Nothing could be better than being together in this place. It's just fucking paradise. And this goes on for some time. And then near the time when they must go to their traditional traveling ways on the land because of food and other reasons, the young men are playing a game with the hoops, right? The hoop game. And one of the young men is killed. And this begets enmity again. They don't fight there, but they go apart. And the momentary paradise of having overcome the beef and coming together collapses again. Yeah, they go apart. The story is much, much richer than that, but there's a stick figure version of it.
Yeah, well told. One of the things that's really kind of struck me about Ngoni warfare and also Amazonian warfare is that when the anthropologists were asking indigenous Amazonian groups why do you fight, they all said for women, and the anthropologists were like, come on, you must be fighting over something like resources, something else. Something. They didn't believe them for ages, but no, they fight for women, and at the conclusion of a lot of different indigenous warfare systems, you swap things. Like, so you come together, for example, the Ngonis, they'll come together, they'll do divination together, they'll do purchase together, they'll drink ergot beer together, and then they'll swap things, including women, you know. And I mean, I'll kind of gloss on that is that they're using women as chattel. I don't know, man. Like, maybe it'd be quite nice to go to a different tribe if you were stuck with these dudes, or you'd been disgraced, or, you know, whatever had happened, and you're in quite small communities, you probably want to be mixing up your genes somehow, you know? And, you know, B-boys going to another part of town and breakdancing and going home with some fly girls. We've been doing that in lots of different ways um, over time, forever, really, I think.
Whether the women are chattel or not, whether they are being treated as possessions or not, I'm going to get in a shit ton of trouble here. This depends on things that are not objective, right? It's not a simple equation. If thus and such happens, the women are being treated as objects. If thus and such doesn't happen, they are not. That's not what's going on. That's what's going on in colonial cultures, right? For sure, a lot, right? But in indigenous cultures, the encompassing way of being human does not collapse into the interpretations of colonizing motherfuckers who exterminate those people ever. This is something I was on about. This blew my mind a little while ago. I was reading Casseret. Casseret didn't say anything about this. I just simply saw him use the word belief in in the sense that archaeologists um, would say that these indigenous peoples had beliefs, right? And for the first time in my life, that whole thing just flipped over in my mind. And I was like, no, they didn't have beliefs. We have beliefs. They had ways of life. They had ways of being human that were deep, rich, profound, and not fucking representational cognition run as code in a people. So we have beliefs. We look on that and say, oh, they're superstitious. How cute. That's so cute of them. How primitive. Oh, those savages, they have these beliefs. It didn't have fucking beliefs. We have beliefs that are from an abstract nonsense place where we look back on their ways of being human and say those are beliefs. That's our fucking belief, not that they don't have beliefs. Now, I'm not saying none of them had beliefs, but what they had was something very different from a belief because it's not a statement in language. It is an enacted traditional way of being human over thousands of years or maybe longer that is so relationally, inactively, emotionally, spiritually complex that there's no chance of it being a belief. Now, I'm not trying to make that as emphatic as it sounds. I have this problem where I do that sometimes, but I'm sure that's unfamiliar to you. You never do that, Danny.
So I won't hold you to any of your non-beliefs.
that's so that's so generous of you. Let's exchange women.
Yeah, those I mean, if you like the studies on those women, it appears that they became normal members of the tribe rather than any kind of slave or any other kind of position.
Right.
I think we're all the way back to Occam, if you must have beliefs, then at least make them not too complicated. And that's actually what he was doing himself. Like he was kind of called over to give a ruling or to give his opinion on apostolic poverty. He said, like, there's this idea in Christianity that
Right.
followers of Christ are meant to be poor.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Why is the Pope dripping in jewels?" And so he gets asked to defend himself, and he says, "Well, you should interpret Scripture in the most simple way possible, and the most simple way possible is to say you're meant to be poor and you own more land than anyone else, and you're dripping in jewels." So he got excommunicated and kind of spent the rest of his life fleeing from the Pope. But
Right.
yeah, when your beliefs or even your definitions, actually your definition of a belief is where it gets problematic. You're back at like
Yes.
uh, what is the limit of that? Like
Mm-hmm.
for your example there, you shouldn't murder. Well, maybe you should. There's a certain situation where actually the guy's probably better off dead, and we'd be better off with him dead. So every kind of statement, final statement, ends up with at the edge case where your belief should break down if it's organic. Um,
Yes.
yeah, but if you must have beliefs, then you should probably at least uh, be light with them, or there should be superstitions around them. You know,
Yes.
don't force them upon
Yes.
children.
Yes. Mm, may we take 5 minutes here?
Yeah, man.
Okay. See you in five. I'm going to pause the recording. Please remind me. I got to remember to turn it back on.
Just reminded me of this couple I met the other day. I was at this event the other day, and they asked me to come and read palms. So I was sitting there with my sign, and someone sits down and like kind of like really immediately very, very hostile to the idea of palmistry. And I've been in this situation quite a lot of times, like many, many times. And it's kind of it's become quite an interesting game to just watch my own reactions and watch how I play this particular gambit, this particular setup of the board. Anyway, but what kind of struck me about the two of them was that they had really strong beliefs. She was, I didn't realize this at the time. She was very cross, and he was epileptic, so much so that he had had an operation and had some kind of piece of machinery stuck that was pressing against, I think, his vagus nerve, um, that would squirt out stuff when it measured a certain change of rhythm in his heart. And he said, "Oh, I can feel it now." And I was watching these two, and they were it was so interesting because they were saying, I was when I meet people like that, well, sometimes I will talk about the endocrinology as it's represented in the hand, or talk about embryonic development and how it kind of feeds into the development of the fingers. And I'm kind of talking their language, and it feels like I'm trying to get some purchase, but also I don't really care if they believe me or not. I did care at one point because this other guy comes up and he says, "Oh, your son just told me you're a palmist, and I quite often organise date nights for me and my wife. I'd like to book you." And this woman's just there fuming at the fact that anyone would want to book a palmist. So at one point I was like, "Okay, I hope this doesn't go south because I could do with the money." But anyway, like they were both like utterly convinced of like they were talking about, for example, what we used to think of as epilepsy and why people believed in astrology and cards and stuff. And I was looking at it, thinking, I didn't say it, but I thought these beliefs aren't doing you any good at all, man. You're medicated and bipolar, and you've got some machinery pressing on your vagus nerves. But you're very anti the idea of trying some breath work and some frankincense because of what's in your head.
Yeah. No, this is the really weird thing. I mean, there's so much here. First of all, I first encountered you, though I had heard your name a few times. I did not know you were a palmist in the panel that Sarah put together on the hand. And it probably took like, I don't know, 9 words into your first statement. And I was like, oh my God, this man's mind space is beyond 99% of what I have ever encountered in my life. And there's a bunch of like beyond in terms of the number of forms of intelligence you can bring to play simultaneously is way past almost anything I ever commonly encounter. Right. So I that really perked me up. And I was like, I gotta have a conversation somehow with this guy in the future. Um, because I think probably in your life, you have a much broader social and intellectual and creative sphere than I do. So it may be more common for you to be in common contact with such folks, unusually minded, brilliant people like Sarah and many of her friends, and like you. Um, but people often try to people I encounter in conversation, they often try to, especially if they are what we might call anti-metaphysical, right? Like this couple is obviously somewhat like this. They try to drag me to a position where there's like a knife and some other object that I really don't want to touch. And they're promoting these as the only way to make a move in cognition that is trustworthy. And often this floats on some kind of a nonsense structure of objectivity or science or whatever, however they decide to phrase it. And I remember after our first conversation, I was talking with a friend like this, and I was singing a little bit of your praises, and he just balked, like military balking. What a bunch of bullshit! Like just pure fuck. You just gonna bullshit around with us? And these topics often, this situation often arises around things such as the tarot, palmistry, astrology, these traditional, I don't know exactly what to call them, intelligence lenses that are often para or directly oracular, right? They're not about, let's play a game with the preformed Legos of language and determine which things are true and which things are not true. They're not like that. And I remember a day when a couple who I was close with, the man, they had asked me to sort of sit in on one of their arguments. And the woman, the young woman, began producing what I felt were completely ridiculous conjectures about the problems in their relationship based on her interpretation of Mercury being retrograde. And I'm not an astrologer, but I've been around astrology since about age 6. And I immediately realized that this was not at all an astrological perspective. This was a gambit where I validate my pet nonsense ideas and not communicate with anyone here. And I use astrology as the weapon to do that. So then I started to think, I mean, first of all, I was just aware that what she was doing, A, wasn't astrology. It was some other thing. And then I started to wonder, what if astrology is formally untrue? And then I had two shocking thoughts. The first one goes back to a science fiction story I read when I was a kid called The Magic Goes Away. And it's about a world where the world undergoes these phase cycles where magic is utterly real and machines will not function. And then there's a twilight where all of the magic starts to fade and only machines will function. And the people have no memory. They're completely unaware that this happens. Right. Um, and I think there's something to almost every science fiction story. But the second thing that occurred to me, which really was shocking, was that, so, okay, just to finish that first thought, there might be times in human history when astrology is the only, like, so important and crucial that without it, you're done for, right? But there might be other times where it's so trivial and unnecessary that to introduce it will mess you up. But then it occurred to me, like, what about if astrology isn't true, quote unquote, but as a way of knowing, it introduces ways, it gives you perspectival lenses that without it, you will never get. There's no way to even think that way. So, one of those lenses is that cause, relation, history, and the future are inflected by orbital relationships that are complex. Right. And in that moment, I was just like, there, I think I would like to know astrology, whether it was true or not, because it would give me ways of seeing, thinking, imagining, and concerning myself with phenomena that without astrology would be pretty much impossible to get at. Not entirely. Oracular behavior in humans is a vast complex of intelligence forms that both resist the structured impositions of language and concepts, the sort of vox populi garbage heap of statements in language that fuck each other and produce new competitors for domination of the mind, essentially, right? Um, yeah, so there's so much here, and I remember being young when I was first beginning to write poetry and becoming fascinated with the non-ordinary aspects of language. It occurred to me that if you could take a single object really deeply seriously, it would probably hold the key to understanding all other objects. But then that introduces a second question. Which object should you focus on? And this one would probably be one of the prime candidates.
Mm.
There's many others, but this one here for humans, this is the stuff, man. Without this, you got nothing. So if the secrets were encoded anywhere, here is a pretty good starting place at the very least. Please, what's on? What does that bring up for you?
Yeah, this book actually. I got all my handbooks out because
Right on.
that one there, Decoding the Hand, is really interesting. It's a kind of history of um, interpreting marks through the lens of palmistry. So it
Hmm.
looks at all kinds of different traditions. And one of the things I find quite interesting about palmistry is how different cultures produce different palmistry. So, for example, in Chinese palmistry, they're really into finding like pictograms on your hand. Like there's a pagoda over here, or like a trident, or that's more in like Indian palmistry, but a fish over here because they're quite pictographic people.
Hmm. Yeah.
And Indians aren't. Indian palmistry is different. It's the length of the length and the quality of different lines. And there's a period in European palmistry where the length of the different phalanges becomes quite important, and there's whole maps of people's skills and detriments according to the different lengths of like different parts of the hand, because that's what you'd see waving at you from the carriages of aristocrats as they went past. And you'd have to make a split decision on what they'd be good at, and should we be thinking about agriculture or warfare or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's quite interesting. Um, yeah, it's endlessly fascinating. The you can look at a lot of things through the hand. Um, you can, like I've looked at the development of the thumb, how the thumb goes around from the side of the hand to the opposition of the hand. In fact, I did this, I think even before I was into palmistry, because I put a lot of that in in my second book, which I wrote about 10 years ago now. And it looks at inflection generally, at inflection and opposition, and I look at it in the development of monkeys and apes and humans, and inflection as um, in language, like the inflected question, for example, which apes don't ask. Like monkeys don't ask questions. They're pretty good at sign language, but no ape has ever said, "Where have you been?" Or, "What color is, what color am I?" Like there was a parrot called Alex, African grey parrot, and when he learned questions, when he learned the question form, and he immediately asked the question, "What color am I?" Right? The apes don't ask that. The babies do. Humans do. Even before they can speak, they go, mm? And they do it with inflection. Yeah. So, but then there's inflection, and then you've got different areas of inflection where you've got, like, for example, the vocal cords, they drop down the throat. So you open up this internal space, and you get it with cortical folding as well. You get it with the shape of the vagina kind of comes back like this, and you get the turning of the thumb against the rest of the hand, and the turning of the ego against the rest of the organism, right? So there's not any other creatures, as far as I'm aware of, that kill themselves. I mean, you've been mentioning it a whole load of times today, this idea of like us pointing the gun back at ourselves. And, you know, there's a great, I can't remember who the science fiction writer was. It might be Kurt Vonnegut, but he's looking at I think it's him. He's looking at the Turing definition of whether a machine is conscious, you know, and if you're typing at a console and you can't tell whether it's a human or not, then he says, okay, it's conscious. It's conscious. That's the Turing definition of intelligence. And I think it's Kurt Vonnegut says, no, if it wants to kill itself, it's it's conscious. Quite, it was contemplating suicide. But yeah, so the thumb comes around in opposition to the fingers. Your thumb is your will.
Mm.
And it's it's developed. I mean, you can kind of go into the development of the morphogens which cause a particular bud to become a finger or a little finger or a thumb, is the concentration, among other things, the concentration of a particular morphogen with a silly name called Sonic Hedgehog, because the guy who named it, his son liked Sonic Hedgehog. Um, but it also controls how much your frontal lobes grow, right?
Mm.
So your the capacity for inhibition, which is in your frontal lobes, and standing against there's a reason we go into the donut shop. We don't eat all the donuts, whereas a chimpanzee would, is because we can inhibit our urges. And the thumb coming again into opposition with all of the other faculties. So that would be the first thing is your own personalities, your own structures and rhythms. I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning yesterday because I was writing, right? Apes don't do that. Apes go to bed. Right? It was sunset, they go to bed. Like humans,
Yeah,
it's
also the apes aren't sitting off in some room doing blibbity blab. Like they get together and sleep as a meta family unit, right? So one of them doesn't go off and start chipping flint at 4 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Like that just doesn't fucking happen, right?
no, more fool them.
More fool us. There's something though that I want to highlight before I lose it, because some forms of perspective for me are very slippery in waking consciousness. So in language, we have these things that we could call statements or declarations, right? And science has a lot to do with this. But then there's a register above that, which is parable, analogy, metaphor. Yeah. Those aren't statements, right? Those are invitations to a certain form of integration over the statement space, it seems to me. But there's something above even that, which I would call an eluciphor. And the way that you do palmistry is eluciphoric. It's above metaphor. It's way above declaration, though you may form declarations in English around the activity. And eluciphors are both elusive and lucid, right? They're among the rarest forms of cognitive experience that we can invoke or create together in some ways, it seems to me. And this is just a toy. I'm not saying that this is true. And the thing about palmistry and astrology is it's weirdly above when done well. And of course, it can be done all kinds of different ways, right? But when done well, it's one of the highest forms of seeing, sensing, knowing, learning, exploring that is ordinarily accessible to us or not very common in our daily experience. Um, I have one more question, but I want to see what's in your mind around that. Excuse me, I've got a
Can you
bit
give
of
me
a
another
hiccups.
example of an elusive for? I'm
Yes.
thinking Lucifer.
Yeah, that's what most people think. I just came up with this term very recently because I neologize about the structure of linguistic intelligence in humans occasionally. Um, really, an eluciphor is a way of escaping the bondage that language might otherwise impose by producing an insight form. Okay, so yeah, another example of an eluciphor is the hand toy that I presented, right? This is one of the most profound ones I've ever come across. A human will count this as five. They're not counting the unifying body. What you don't count disappears to awareness. You are no longer aware of it. Right? So to count this as five is a way of being out of your fucking mind. It's insane. And it leads to a bunch of problems. You want to count the unifying body first. And basically, you want to go beyond that. You want to count the uplink first, the uplink to systems above this, that this is both an expression of, and that you will find that structure in the systems up register from this across the wrist. So you would go like plus one unity. You remember the unity. Then you turn it over and go one unifying body. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? Plus 7 is how an intelligent being might differently count our hand. Emphasis on the uplink. This next emphasis on the unifying or the unity, which is also forgotten, often not counted with humans regularly. Then the importance of the unifying body, without which these are meaningless. They don't even exist. They don't connect here. You got nothing, right? But we're taught to count this as five. Insane. It would break your mind to count it this way because this counting method contagiously colonizes all other concepts. It's an eluciphor. It's a holophor, actually, is a better word. It's such a core concept that what you get wrong here will be uniquely mutated and reproduced in almost everything else you think. So there's an example of an eluciphor, the hand toy.
So it's a kind of it's a strategy of thought, I guess, which is uh it's kind of a subversive thought strategy, I'm thinking.
I would
Like
say something a little weirder. It's an escape hatch from seven traps that otherwise will eat your mind and planet. Like it's a way out of traps. It lets you see from above things that you've never seen from above that way. And my sense of your relationship with palmistry, limited though that sense is, presents it to me as very eluciphoric. And by the way, people who count five, they will draw knives if you bring in a lucifer. They will pull they were like, "You're saying what, bro? We're going to war." Right? Like that couple you met. The structured cognition in their belief systems, right, will fight you if you bring an antidote often.
I kind of, yeah, I'd like to understand it more because what I do recognize there is, um, I do really piss people off, and I'm not entirely sure why.
You're not
Because I'm
pissing
quite
people off.
polite.
You're pissing off a structured array of lies, often in language, known as beliefs, that are very similar to what corporations and governments and the military systems do on our world in our people, right? It's a localized version of a corporate array of little chunks of fucking language that tell you what can be and what cannot be, what should be thought or said, and what must not be thought or said. That's what you're pissing off. The people are checked out when they start forming up that way. They're like a hotel with 60 rooms empty. So the thing that you're pissing off is the absence of something, I think, often. And that absence presents as beliefs very commonly, even in
Mm.
me.
But I keep on getting kicked out of the hotel, Darren.
You weren't supposed to be in a hotel in the first place, Danny. You're supposed to be in the forest, the sky and the mountain and the dreaming. I keep on getting kicked out of the hotel. I couldn't tell if you meant that literally, figuratively, or both.
No, I mean, yeah, actually, I think I might. That's one thing I do in language is I use statements often which are both literal and figurative.
Hmm.
Um,
Me too.
I take a kind of perverse delight in it. No, I get kicked. I've got kicked out of so many organizations, including ones that I founded myself. Like yeah, it's a bit of a recurrent theme, and yeah, I'd like to be able to manage it better because it does cause me some problems. Um, one of the when I was training as a palmist, I was training with a guy who was a Vedic astrologer. He was one of the students. He wasn't the teacher, and he said,
Unimaginably complex and brilliant system,
"Oh
Vedic
yeah,
astrology. Just
yeah,
on like depth, like you'll never find.
yeah." It's one of those things that I look at and I go, "Not this lifetime." Like
Hmm.
I don't, there's so much I want to learn. I'm already like 30 years down on most, not even more actually. I probably started palmistry about 16 years ago,
Mm.
and there are people who've been learning from their parents in family lines where they've been reading palms for 1,000 years. And
Right.
so I'm just catching up with all that. So when I look into something like, I don't know, yeah, it could be Vedic astrology, or it could be a number of things. Someone said to me the other day, "Are you interested in human design?" I was like, "Nope, no, I'm not." Yes, I am, but no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Not this lifetime. But anyway, he said something interesting. He said the first thing his teacher said to him was, you got to stop lying." Like not him personally, but one can't lie as if you work in divination. Um, and that's like Indian culture, they're a little bit more comfortable with lying than they are in let's say in England, for example. I'm talking about the subcontinent is a place where people will be quite loose with their words. But he was an Indian guy, and you're saying that's something you really can't do because if you get into the habit of not telling the truth, then your predictions just simply aren't going to work. And I find that with my work as a hypnotist as well. I'm really superstitious about not saying something that I'm not going to do, or like I would never say to my children, if you don't have your shoes on by the time I count to three, you're staying home, because then I have to make them stay at home. Yeah, I'm really careful about making threats that I'm not prepared to do, um, because I'm really superstitious about saying something with my mouth, my unconscious. no, is going to go, oh, wait, that guy said that thing and then did that thing. And then when you speak, you see this in gesture as well. But if you speak as a hypnotist and your musculature is not coherent, i.e., it's going both this way and resistant at the same time, then your voice changes. And you
Hmm.
see it in gesture. In fact, this woman, Charlotte Wolf, who's a really interesting palmist, endocrinologist, and she wrote the first psychology of lesbianism as well. A fascinating woman. But she talks about it in gesture, and she says that some people have certain gestures that are just commanding because they're not because their muscles basically don't have any internal resistance in it. And you can see that particularly in teachers. You know, there's certain people in a school situation will just command their class with small gestures, and other ones they will lose control of the class really quickly because they can just people can just see that your gesture is not fluid because there's something in you that's not fluid. And it's what you were talking about there about if you understand everything about something, like the body in a general sense, including gesture, including the hand. But I think body language is one of those other things that you can just you can tell the whole. Milton Erickson was a master at this. He was a great hypnotist. People used to he'd have a client sit down next to him and he'd say, so how long have you been having that affair for? Or like, I can see that your mother didn't get on with you, but you had a nice auntie from how a woman had sat down. Like,
Right, which ordinary people would have a very difficult time understanding and might presume there's some kind of a psychic thing, quote unquote, going on there. There is some kind of a psychic thing going on, but it's not uh merely non-ordinary.
yeah, that's a really interesting area of palmistry as well. I found like I remember reading this one woman and for whatever reason I was just on a roll and I said, okay, you've got a very particular Saturn line, should have a straight Saturn line. I said, okay, yeah, so you work in academia, yeah, and you've got like a writer's fork, your headline splits. I think you're involved in writing somehow. Um, blah blah blah. I think it's something to do with it might be writing about philosophy or something. And then I said, is it Nietzsche? And she went, yeah. And Nietzsche wasn't on her hand, you know,
Right.
but there's something which happens. I really don't understand it. I've seen it with my teacher as well. He'd be reading someone's hand for a bit. He used to get a guinea pig into the room and he'd be reading her hand and then he'd whisper to her. I saw this one time and he whispers, and she, how the fuck did you know that? And he said, you work in HR in a medium-sized corporation.
Okay,
And
so I mean,
yeah,
this brings me to a couple of questions that I have. So first of all, um, without whatever the fuck it was that happened to me for 9 months in 2002, I would have almost none of the insight and ability that I have. Like it ripped me five kinds of new minds all day for a long time. I don't have an explanation for what that was. I have stories about it, whatever. That's not what I want to focus on here. I mention it though for a specific reason that'll become clear in a moment, I hope. When you spoke about the Chinese looking for pictographs, right? When I went to the my first experience of learning something from someone who might be a shaman, quote unquote. I'm suspicious of the word, by the way, not of the idea, but the word. Uh, it was how can I if I lost his name, probably doesn't even matter. The famous Western guy who was an anthropologist and spent a bunch of time with indigenous folks and developed this thing called core shamanism, Way of the Shaman, he wrote. Anyway, I was there with about 300 people, and it was my first exposure. Um, I know his name, it's just not coming to me, so I'm not going to
thinking
focus.
Tausig or Winkleman, but it's not either of them, is it?
It's
Oh,
Michael Harner.
oh yeah, okay.
Some there, I'm like, what, 32 or something? Anyway, I managed to get his, like, he asked for a volunteer, and I managed to get picked. And he had us bring a stone with us. And so we would have a question, you know, uh, and like a querent in Tarot, right? You have some kind of a question. And he, by the way, was very clear. He said, go find a stone before the thing. Go find a stone, take it, bring it with you. We'll use it here. When we're done, you're going to take the stone back to exactly where you found it and put it back there. So what he did, what he was showing was a core principle of oracular sensing or intelligence, where you have a question, you bring the stone, and you look for with the shaman with you, you look for the answers in shapes and little sort of pseudo pictograms on the stone, right?
Hmm.
And in Western language, we might compare that with pareidolia, right? This is sort of active, intentional pareidolia. Yeah? So the
Hmm.
question I have for you is: have you ever had an experience where those things exploded into your awareness, unbidden, unstoppably, even for a few moments, where like
Yeah.
you felt the origin of where all those things come from directly as your own mind? Have you ever had an experience like or that resembles that?
You're talking about pareidolia everywhere all the time.
No, I'm talking about perhaps a short span of time or a few days where you can't not see the shapes and their implications and how they link together.
Mm.
Like it becomes your primary, you are subjected to it, which madness is obviously one form of that, but not the only form.
Um, yeah, I understand the question. I think I've had a strange experience for about 5 minutes, which was just a unitive experience of everything, and nothing was going on. I was literally at dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in the room was um like iron filings arranged. Um, and ever since that moment, this was in Japan, and someone was reaching to put a piece of meat on the grill, like, and someone was singing karaoke over there and all this stuff. Um, but like that, what like that omen logic is permanent, man. It's like I've made I probably all of my major decisions in life have been on kind of logics like that. When I left, when I was very ill for 8 months, I had a parasite which I treated with ayahuasca, and I was drinking ayahuasca every day for 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And as I came out of that, all the way through that, the omen logic was absolute. It was everything, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I met a woman towards the end of it who was kind of nursing me back to, well, I was kind of healthy by then, but I was mental. I was actually crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
she was with me. Um, she came back to where I lived. She was doing stuff like digging chunks of glass that had been buried 30 years ago in acts of black magic out of the ground and
Holy
fucking
shit.
crazy
Okay.
stuff.
Okay.
Like really crazy stuff. Um, she had this whole week, 2 weeks, where she was dreaming and telling me her dreams in the morning, and then they'd unfold during the day.
Yep.
And one of them was that I'll tell you about it now. Actually,
Mm.
she had a dream about a place, us going to a place where there were lots of broken glass and putting the glass underwater, which is a superstition that I have. And she, um, and then a little girl came and plaited her hair. That's the dream. And then the same day, we went to it was called the Feitio House, which is where they made the ayahuasca. And
Mm.
we went there, and as we went in, we hadn't got around the corner yet, where you could see the building that had all the broken masonry in it. But she goes, "Oh, this is where I was yesterday." And then, okay, we go around the corner, and then she goes, "Oh, and there's the broken glass." And I went, "Yeah, interesting." And we went around the corner more, and the lake had risen, right? For whatever reason, that day I was there for a year. The only time that the lake was any higher than normal was that day because a pipe had been connected differently.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, okay, there's the water, there's the stuff going underwater. That's quite a bit kind of interesting, pretty good. And then we took a bath and we went home. And the following day we went back there. Someone else was using the well, so we were sitting there, and she starts clawing at the ground, starts unearthing these chunks of glass, and we took 6 sacks of glass out of the ground, which had been buried by a guy I knew nothing about. It's a kind of the history of that place. There'd been a black magician who smashed rum bottles together and buried loads of glass all over the place. He ended up getting killed, and that was the reason that that community had closed down. And that was yeah, there's a whole loads of layers of history. But anyway, we took the glass round the corner to a friend's house, and the daughter of the house comes in and starts plaiting her hair.
Hmm.
And this was happening every day
Right.
for quite a long time. And then we went to
Meanwhile, that's just a bunch of nonsense, bullshit, like that's just astrology. You people are just crazy. There's nothing to that. There's no thing there. That's what are you
I,
talking about? Like, yeah.
I remember specifically the day when I stopped writing coincidences in my diary. In fact,
Mm.
I stopped writing the diary not long after that. But I remember thinking, I can't, there's no, I actually remember thinking, this isn't what magicians do. They don't consider it remarkable when something magical happens.
Right.
It's just life. But
Right.
anyway, then
By
what
the way, that's what
happened?
I meant by we have beliefs. See?
Right.
We have beliefs. Well, this can't happen. This is not supposed to
Yeah.
happen. I got to write this down. Right? Please go. Please continue.
I want to tell you about that, something about that in a second. But
Mm.
yeah, so then what happens was I had to skip the country because my visa was a bunch of stuff happened. Right? I won't tell you all of it, but we went to Bolivia, and in Bolivia, I went. This is the first time I got to the internet shop for quite a long time, and I went and I got an email from a friend saying that she just got pregnant. She was very happy. I got an email from another friend saying she just had a baby, and he was really happy. I emailed a friend. Two friends told me they dreamt about me, and then I emailed a friend and I said, if I go home and get this woman pregnant, do you think all my problems will be over? And it was around the same day that I'd bought her a tarot deck and the lover's card of all the cards had been weirdly printed. And the lover's card was when I very first met her, literally the first thing that she said to me was she drew a card out of my deck when I was at this other place, and it was the lover's card. And I immediately persuaded her that I was celibate at the time, and I thought she was a crackhead. I was very paranoid. Um, so I kind of disabused her of any ideas about it. But anyway, the lover's card popped up. And then so I went back to the hostel after this experience and I opened the door and she said, "Do you want to have a child?" And I went, "Yeah, all right." And so we did. And when the kids were born, because it was twins, which is the mystical name of the lovers, is the twins, they were both born with birthmarks where my own parasitic wound had been. Um, yeah, so that, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm in a kind of constant state of pareidolia. Um,
I would call it something different. I understand what the word means. I would call it something different.
yeah.
I mean, actually, what I would call it is transcentience. And I might pick a better word than that, but it's a transcendent state. It's a not merely sentient way of having a mind. And by the way, when transcendent people are together, it tends to synergize and amplify itself, in my
Interesting.
experience. Common.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say actually was, well, two things. The thing about transcendence, like, I'm going to say, I was about to say, I believe, I don't believe the main the operating system of the world of the universe is poetry, and poetry works through rhyme and meter, and you know it. I just wrote a book about this. Like my latest book is quite a short book. It's called Myth, Magic, and Medicine, and
Hmm.
it's about this stuff. But if you know a rhyme poetry works that like you line up symbols and the next set of symbols is constrained, right? It's going to be the same
Partly,
meter.
it's partly constrained.
Yeah, partly constrained, exactly, within limits. So magic can go in all kinds of different ways, but it can't go in all kinds of directions. Otherwise, it's not magic. You know, if you incant for money and you end up poor, you've got it wrong. You know, um, but there's something really interesting I found in a particular type of flow state, and it happens often when I'm reading, and I'm leaning into it more, is that I will start demanding synchronicity off my client. So, for example, um, I was talking to someone about her enlarged Pluto, and she had droplets on her fingers, which meant she had more touch receptors than most people, and it gave her a particular tactile sense. And the combination of those two factors, this one here and this one over here, means that your instincts are really good and your intuition's really good. She said, "How do I follow my intuition?" And I said, "Pull a card, but don't turn it." And she pulled a card, and I said, "Just give me a word. Say the first thing that comes to your head." And she said, "Nature." So we turned the card, and it's the Ace of Discs, which has just loads of nature in it. And I found that with in certain situations when it works when I have the absolute either love or focus of the person I'm with, then I can tell them to do something. I did this with my son the other day. We were cycling off somewhere, and I said, "This is the road. Tell me which number it is." He'd never been there before. And we go down this street. We got all the way to the end of the street, and he still hadn't guessed. And then it was one of these strange roads. I was lost by this point. I'd actually forgotten where the house was. But you had to cross over another road and get to the other road. And we go in there, and he goes, "Yeah, it's number 31." And I said, "Go and knock on the door then." He's like, "Really?" "Yeah, yeah, go and knock on the door." It was number 31. And I did this with my ex-girlfriend. One time we went to the Brompton Time Machine, um, which is in this cemetery near where my dad lives. And she's got no sense of direction at all. And as we went in, were you on the call the other day with Stephen Coates? A couple of days ago? No, one of Sarah's things. But anyway, Stephen, it doesn't matter. But we went to this Brompton Cemetery, and I said, "Go and find the time machine." And it's like 38 acres, and it's, I don't know, 40,000 graves or something. She has no sense of direction anyway, and we'd never been there before. And she said, "No, no, I can't do that." I was like, "Go and find it. Stop arguing with me." And she goes down the path past Emily Pankhurst's grave, does a left, which is the right direction, does a right, which is the right direction, does another left, does another right, walks past the crossroads where she should have done another right, and she continues. And I'm calling out to the gods, going, "Make her come back again." And to the dead, because we're in a cemetery. So, like, because I'm walking behind her, just seeing where she goes. And she continues, she turns right, and I was wrong. And she was actually found her way almost perfectly to this one grave, which is, it's quite a big looking grave, but to find it amongst tens of thousands was very, very impressive. And again, I'd got lost, but I think that I think when you have, it's not just total self-belief,
No.
because that's something different.
Yes.
Um, but I find that's really interesting because it's kind of infectious. Like
Yes.
you can push it into somebody else.
Actually, you can push it into groups. Under the
Yeah,
under the right conditions, you can get groups synergizing around something like this. I remember in the early days of my experience, I was so naive and I had no idea. I mean, I was in nine kinds of crisis, but a woman was having a garage sale up the street from
yeah,
me. Never seen her before. And I was having experiences like this all the time, but this was the first time it was very profound and clear. I was looking at some of the little tchotchkes she was selling. She had a little sort of a jewelry box and stuff, and I was touching them. And as I was touching them, like masses of information were just flowing into my mind about her life and her history and her family and her parents and stupidly, very naively, because I was so excited by this new way of seeing, in which everything around me was like a living book that would read itself to me in ways that I'd never imagined as even conceivable. So I turned to her and I said, like, your name's Judy, isn't it? Isn't it? And she goes, have we met? And I said, no. Your name is Judy, though, right? She's like, yeah. And I said, your father, he died of lung disease. He was a coal miner in the Carolinas. And she was like, how would you know that? I said, you've been trying to write a book about him. She goes, you wait right here. I'm getting my boyfriend. Right. She thought I'd been spying on her. All that information was brand new to me. I had no idea who she was, right? And this happened a number of times in the early days because in the beginning I thought very ignorantly, everyone will want this. Everyone will want to see and participate and they will want to have this experience too. No, they fucking don't. Right? Wrong. This is how people got burnt on trees, right? And buried in the ground in pieces. No, they will not want to participate. Like if there's not a pre-existing agreement and you start doing something like this, pointed objects are going to come into your body in short order, right? Like You need to really slow the fuck down and have three thoughts before you randomly, arbitrarily start just being this way. I want to be really clear. That's not me taking credit for something. Whatever was going on, it wasn't Darren, right? It's not my ego. In a way, it's like nine kinds of me being absent so that other intelligences can play in that space or something resembling that. Even that's a shitty description. Also, I found that unlike adults, children knew exactly what was going on if I showed up. Bingo, immediately the children are like making little hand signals to me and drawing, little pictures and stuff. They were like animals too. Same thing with animals. But adult humans, you got to stay the fuck away from those generally, or like play the way that their knife system works, you know. Exceptions noted.
Hmm.
I've never had experiences like those you describe with the mother of your twins. I've never had anything resembling that in my life.
My
Though,
it's,
please continue.
well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of story of my life, man. Like the woman I mentioned there who took us to the grave, she
Hmm.
gets in touch with me out of the blue on the internet because of something I'd written about or published about epilepsy.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
she's a
very important topic, by the way, but keep going.
so she's epileptic. She's a quite a accomplished artist, and we started doing this project together, which was hypnosis, poetry,
Oh my God.
and hypnosis, poetry, and artwork. And her art
Wait,
is
didn't
really
didn't well
otherworldly.
before you were born, didn't they just tell you, Danny, if you go down there, don't mix these three things? Hypnosis, poetry, and art. Didn't weren't I'm pretty sure they told you specifically not to do
Yeah.
that, bruh. Are you subject to anything resembling epilepsy?
That's interesting.
Because I am.
I've had a migraine once,
Hmm.
which was brought on by magic ritual and
Okay.
opening. Um, I think that the biophysiology of epilepsy is quite close to a lot of prophetic experience, like the aura
Hmm.
um, is provocable and also manageable actually with certain herbs and certain practices. I'm very opinionated about it because I've looked at it very closely in her.
Mm.
Freud said, I hope I'm not saying anything rude here. Freud said that epilepsy is,
Almost every human that I've ever met, myself included, and this may be a relatively simplistic description of the problem, but a simplistic one is better than none to begin with. I have something that could be seen, I'm cribbing this language from transactional analysis, as a life script, right? This is a kind of inner fairy tale that must not be violated. Um, and generally, it has to end badly,
hmm,
right? These were often forged in childhood as coping mechanisms for a world, living with adults who you can neither control or often not even influence.
I'm familiar with that language and I
Hmm.
really struggle with it.
Oh, you don't
It's
like it?
no, it's not that I don't like it.
Oh, well,
It's
show me something similar or better. By all means, let's not
no,
argue
it's
about
it.
TA.
That's the problem. There isn't something similar or better. You know, like
Oh.
Naomi Klein, um, like the depressive position is understanding that. I mean, what Freud said is basically right. I think, you repeat until you remember, and your scripts. The worst thing about scripts is you'll draft people in to be characters in your script, and you'll warp them into uh, you'll warp them into those characters. I think as a magical person, I I I just I can't really um I can't give into that.
May I introduce something slightly different?
But just finish the thought though.
Oh, by all means,
Like
sorry.
like so the idea the basis of magic, the idea of magic is to change things in accordance with will. And the transactional analysis is that you can't, and I keep on getting proved wrong, like over and over again. It's like maybe that's my script is to be continually proved wrong in that situation. But I actually I can't integrate those two
Uh-huh.
systems
I
of
see.
understanding.
Yeah.
Like because if I'm going to say, oh yeah, actually I can't affect the world, then I don't know if I can. I don't know if my magics are will continue to work. And if I, do you know what I mean? I'm kind of,
Yes.
but I can't see it being incorrect. It's absolutely fucking fundamental. It keeps on happening to me. And
Okay, may I introduce a
yeah,
slightly
yeah, I do.
different? Okay, so forget the life script idea completely. Let's just set that aside. Let's look at this a different way momentarily. Um, I'm always chasing insight of a variety of different forms, and I have a modestly useful way of integrating over disparate topics, which obviously is something very familiar to you, right? You clearly have this kind of a mind, and I deeply appreciate those. That's very transcendent, not to, imprint that on everything, but all right. So one thing I noticed was this. Humans will tend to reenact patterns they've enacted before. They don't care whether the patterns are successful. That's not the fucking question. The
Mm,
question is, do I know how this works? Literally, those three words, how this works. And
mm,
if I know how to be a victim, or I know how to be a perpetrator, or I know how to be a judge, or I know how to be a spectator or a comedian, right? I know how it works, right? So I will tend to enact um, templates of behavior, mind, being, and so forth that I am familiar with because I know how they turn out. Why is that so compelling? Here's one aspect of the answer to that. I don't know how improv works out. I don't know what it means to be an actually fully capable, multi-intelligenced human being improvising and magically relating with existence. I don't know how that works, but I know how it works to fail. I know how it
mm.
works to reenact a pattern that I've enacted 1,000 times before. And even if the outcome is shitty, I am saved from the terror of improv.
Mm.
Imagine someone who, for example, does not want to have a voice conversation ever on the phone, in person, not at all. Because a voice conversation in real time is improvisatory. So, what they want to do is write text messages where
Mhm.
they can start to compose, fail, recompose, stop, make little chunks. They know how that fucking shit works, and they're not on the spot in terms of you
Mhm.
have to perform now, right? So, this is one principle that I've noticed that I find endemic, especially in couples who are either not communicating or not getting along. Almost always there's a there's friction around this issue. Are we going to run a template, or are we going to improvise, see, learn, grow, create, right? And each person has different motivations for templated behavior, but the primary fear is of improvisation because the outcome is not pre-generated, whereas the outcome of running a template, you know exactly what the fuck is going to happen. There's no You've got nothing to fear because the outcome's predetermined. There's other ways to see it, but I found this perspective useful, even in dealing with myself.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, you're exactly right. Um, I think one of the interesting things about like close relationship, normally romantic relationship, not always, it can be a good friend as well, is that if you're a comedian, they know all your jokes anyway, you know, and that's why relationship is so testing. Um, my own, yeah, quite interesting. I have a therapist, and she's not partnered, I'm pretty sure. She doesn't tell me much about her life.
Mm-hmm.
but I get the feeling, and I she's amazing. She's a fantastic therapist. I really like her.
Mm, wow.
Um, but I get the I get the feeling that she can't get into a relationship where because she can't do inauthentic, and I get the feeling that I might be in a similar place. I like the idea of being in a relationship again, um, but I can't really imagine it at the moment. Um, and it feels like there's just too much bullshit to work through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And clearly, not everyone is running scripts all the time. And
Agreed.
some people are, they have a sense of humor about their scripts. You can find ways around them or
Mm,
to work with them. But this is a terrible thing. This is like a terrible Gnostic hell because
yeah.
the other side of that is that, you know, if said person knows how this works and they won't improvise, that means we're just going to go cycling through familiar hells forever or until we annihilate ourselves, you know? And
Or
that's
the
the thing.
relationship.
No, but I think it's bigger than that. Like,
Oh, I
I
agree.
think it's societal. I think it's societal, you
No, I
know?
agree. Oh, I very much agree. I mean, think of the scripting input we receive in a single day of common modern life,
Yeah.
right? It's like, and think of the improv. How much are we actively invited to leave the script space and improv together in an ordinary day? Because we're being actively imprinted with scripting particles, so to speak, right? Pre-script DNA, whatever you want to call it, right? All day long in language and images, the
Yeah, yeah,
internet,
yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
where is the call
Warnings.
to improv? Where is the call to
Well, so
transcentience?
there's an opportunity there, isn't there?
Yeah,
Like, because if you do improvise, then you're suddenly, luminescent amongst amongst zombies.
that's really like
Um,
a zombie suddenly flipping over into the opposite thing.
and that's in itself quite dangerous. You
Yes.
kind of
No, you're gonna piss the zombies off, bro. I mean, what are you thinking? You got
yeah.
to have at least a little pod of zombies, maybe, that flip over together regularly.
Mm.
Can we take 5 here? I know we probably have to wrap soon, but how's
Yeah.
your
All
time?
right. I've got to go in a minute actually.
Okay,
L
we can just continue for now then.
yeah. Where are you?
San Francisco,
Oh, right. Okay. I'm
and
trying.
you?
I'm in the UK. I'm in Hastings. My friend's birthday is in a couple of weeks in Washington, D.C.,
Mm,
and I'm toying with the idea. I've got myself a credit card now,
which you don't believe in.
which I don't believe in. I don't.
You're not sure if you believe in it was I think the language you used. And I'm going to hold you to that in the future. That's written in
But
stone, Danny.
well, it's credit, isn't it?
Hmm.
Do I credit the credit? Um, yeah. Anyway, so I'm thinking of heading over to the States in for I don't know, for a few days because the couple of things I want to go. He's ill. He's got a him. Um,
Mm.
that's one thing. But also I've got a there's a Denver Psychedelics conference which I no Detroit actually Detroit Psychedelics conference which I could maybe go to as well. But anyway, I was wondering if you're in the area. But you're not. San Francisco's miles away.
You have an open invitation to come here and stay, and I might even partly
Thanks.
fund that if you have that inclination.
Oh wow, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Uh,
no problem. So we can take that up in further conversations.
oh, let me think about that.
Yeah.
Can you get me a bunch of palmistry gigs out there? Do you think
Bunch of what kind of gigs?
palmistry?
Poetry gigs?
Palmistry. Will I be
Palmistry
able to
gigs.
read palmistry
Oh,
in San Francisco?
in theory, almost certainly seems likely. But again, we will discuss,
Yeah.
right? Because, here, San Francisco and Berkeley, Oakland, this
Mm.
is this is like everybody wants some of this. Everybody. This is not, no one's going to fight you here. They're going to just, yeah, this is palmistry wonderland. Like any kind of oracular thing
Yeah,
here, this is a, not in the same way in certain parts of Europe it might be, but no, this is ground zero for that kind of thing in the United States.
interesting.
Also psychedelics. I mean, all of the things we've orbited, these are features of the system of mind here, especially in San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland.
I went to the psychedelics conference there a bunch of years ago.
Mm.
Um, we're going back a long time. Must be about 15, 20 years ago, maybe even more. It was, yeah, it was a long time ago. But yeah, man, interesting part of the world. The amount of homeless people there is completely blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, San
And
Francisco has become, it's undergone waves of gentrification over time, and the current status of that is unbelievably catastrophic.
yeah, I noticed that I was in Portland as well, man. I was in Portland, I think last year, the year before. It was like, fucking hell, amazing country. But like the cognitive dissonance of coming from the UK and looking at the US is like it's such an interesting country.
I mean,
It's absolutely mind-blowing.
a day in like Glastonbury or anywhere around, there's many places in Europe, a day there would be like literally dying and going to another universe compared to what I experience here. My friends who are in Britain, their like way of life, their mind, the few friends that I have that
Right.
are in Europe, they might as well be from another planet. I mean, it's just nothing like our experience here. And the
Yeah,
universe, excuse me, the the United States is not the universe. The United States is ground. It's the primary petri dish for every kind of linguistic psyop you can possibly imagine, and every sort of computational psyop. Like we are the guinea pig for every version of this imaginable. Like the guinea pig, you know, par excellence. So the
yeah.
people here, their minds are just shattering, right? There's nothing for them to cohere with. I don't know how clear this is to people who don't live in the United States. I think they see some of it.
I've seen it with a few of my American friends. They just don't know which. I mean, yeah, they're kind of a lot of them are terrified.
No, I
Like
think it's a thing that propagates and worsens on a time scale that's unimaginable, like every 10 seconds. It's not like oh, it'll be worse tomorrow. No, it'll be worse in 32 seconds. Like it'll be four times worse than it was 32 seconds ago. Ready? 32, 31, right? That's what's going on here. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, man, firsthand. Like it is a fucking nightmare. Yeah.
It's such an opportunity though.
Yes, it
Like,
is. Yeah, medicine here, shit matters.
yeah, I just the idea of when I heard, I mean, someone told me that the homeless population in the millions in the US, I think it was 2.5 million. This was a couple of years ago. Like, you could do anything with an army of 2.5 million. Like, what could you not do with an organizing system? Like, I'm thinking about what Malcolm X managed in a fairly short time by just
Hmm. Yeah,
offering a different structure.
you and I have similar dangerous thoughts. Um, so one of mine is I think we could compose a linguistic toy that would flip the fucking table and be contagious. Like, what's the opposite of the nam shub of Enki? What's the opposite of the phrase that destroys minds? Very interested in these
This is what I was
topics.
doing with Rima. This is what I was doing with that artist. Like hypnotic inductions, looking at her artwork. I'll send one to you.
Please.
Um, it's like a 17-minute art piece. Absolutely like really, really beautiful, totally mind-blowing. People like tripping in a few minutes and all kinds of weird stuff happening.
Yes, yes, of
Like
course. Yeah. No, there's all these assets that no one's using intelligently that if you synergize just a few of them, it could move the planet. And I just want to say one more hyperbolic thing. Every organism that ever drew breath on this world, the sun, every organism that will ever be born here, the sky, the mountain, the water, the ocean, they're all praying for a way to wake the fucking humans up.
yeah, no, I
So
think you're right.
if you're on that mission, you will get allies and they will open the treasure house to you, right? This is a certainty in my mind.
Yeah, it comes. There's a certain problem there. You're right. I agree with you, and I've seen this a lot in the ayahuasca world. Like ayahuasca, for example, is it doesn't really care about you as an individual. It cares about soldiers in a battle that it's wanting to fight.
Mhm.
And it will improve your diet. It will take you out of your shitty job. It will do a million things for you as long as you're on its program.
Mhm.
But if you're not, or if you fall off it, it won't stop to pick you up, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that's the kind of terror of it. It's like that. Yes, you're right. Those forces of regeneration, which are coming through. I think. I mean, the gods are waking up. I
Oh, by
think
the way, the
this.
humans know how to wake up the gods, spill blood, right? That wakes up the gods every fucking time. Obliterate the ecological nurseries from which life arose in the beginning and still arises. Attack those. Yeah, you'll wake the gods up. They'll come right now. The
Uh,
network
uh,
engineers will wake up. And by the way, you don't want to meet those. If you draw
well, I
the
was going to.
attention of the network engineers, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a different kind of squadrons of gods, and I think the ones that decided to take a back seat about 500 years ago. I think these guys are back. I think they had a look and they were like, "Do you know what? I'm going to leave this shit for you. Maybe 400 years. I'm going to leave you guys to fucking sort this out, and we'll be back in a few hundred years." I think those guys are coming back,
I have a
and
different, I see what you're getting at, but I see it rather differently. I don't think they decided to go away. I think there was a series of catastrophes that broke the signaling apparatus between the primordials and our people. The network broke down. But that's not the only way I see it, right? It's not like I don't have a belief.
Mhm.
It's not my belief. But yeah, what I was shown and given to see was a very complex array of breakdowns in linkage between the primordials and our species. Again, not the only way I think about it, but
Next time we have a conversation, Darren, I'm going to hear more of what you think. I've been talking all this time, and I still don't really know what makes you tick. Um,
no, I'm so glad, and that was my goal, right? And we can have further conversations at will. But I was hoping for this. This is what my plan was, right? So that's beautiful. Please don't feel in any way, like you didn't share the space or something. Because that's not what we were here for. I was here to hear your mind. Yeah.
why? Thank you.
And
All right. Well,
what a beautiful and incredible array of intelligences you are. My God, how refreshing. I knew I was on the right track, but I didn't realize the scope, linguistics, psychology, physics. Like, yeah, you're nine kinds of polymath on a bad drug, bro.
well, I should probably go before I
Yeah.
disabuse you of that very
Okay.
positive opinion of me. Um, I'm going to send you a link to my latest book, Darren, if I may.
I will put it in the description.
What are we doing here? Is this going somewhere?
Yeah, this will be on my YouTube channel, as I mentioned.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, right. No, I forgot that bit. I didn't notice that bit. I might have spoke with a little bit
I'm
more
glad you didn't
care.
know. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't know. Thank God you
I thought we were
forgot
just having
that.
a chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. All right. I should read emails with a bit more
Yeah, no, don't do
attention in
that.
the future.
Nah. No, just follow the magic improv, Danny. You're doing great. Love you. You're brilliant. Oh my God, what a medicine on legs you are.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to chat. Let's do it again sometime.
Very soon. Thank you so much. All
All
blessings to
right.
you, those you love, the land and the people there. Yeah.
Likewise, Darren. Really good to talk. Lots of love, yeah.
Okay. Wise dreams, my friend.
Bye.
Peace for now.